Good evening, peasants and royalty alike who have found the Superist Show ever with Dylan Wade and Daniel Lewis Crumpton. It is episode 520, and we are in the month of May. Confirmed? So,
Confirmed.
I got it.
It,
Five.
it, you didn't lose 2 months again.
Right. I know, man. Yeah,
Correct.
May the 20th is this date, and the reason that we are recording this Superist Show because we actually have reasons and prompts for recording Superist Show ever rather
Yeah.
than just obligatory.
Yes, I mean, sometimes. Usually it's just obligatory, but this has a prompt. This is special.
I thought all of them had prompts, man. We just, I don't feel the need to produce a Superist show ever, like on a regular basis, if there's nothing worth talking about.
No, no, we never have a schedule. We never have like set topics, but we always have a general outline or vibe.
Right. I mean, we have, no, what's that word I'm looking for? Meaningful content.
Yeah, I know.
Rather,
That's really weird.
no, to have meaningful content for people to listen to rather than just another episode on another day of repeating what everybody else says on a news feed and yada, yada, yada. I mean, what a quaint little concept, having something meaningful to talk about. And
I
I'm
know.
really excited about this one. And
I
the
am too.
reason why, I'll tell you why, Dylan, but you already
Uh,
know.
yep. Tell me why.
Because normally I am the one who gets the moniker of the scrapper, but I get a message this morning. And it's a link to a Twitter thing from Dylan Wade, and I can read the seething animosity coming from Dylan. And I said, "Oh, my little boy's grown all up, and now this time he wants to rip somebody a new one."
Yes.
So Dylan, there's somebody me and you've been talking about behind the scenes that you got a bone to pick with. You wanna name drop that dude?
Yes. Uh, Former presidential candidate Andrew Yang and mayoral candidate for New York City was the leading candidate, now in second place, behind somebody objectively worse than him, but he's not getting my fire and brimstone tonight. Andrew Yang is.
Andrew Yang. Now, this is the first time I'm hearing this dude's name. You say he was a presidential candidate?
Yes, he ran for the Democratic nomination
Uh-huh.
um, on a platform of universal basic income, getting rid of social benefits, welfare, unemployment, social security, SSI, social security, not SSDI. He advocated for getting rid of all of those in place of a universal basic income of $1,000 a month to every
Okay.
citizen.
Oh, and before we really get rolling, just for the listeners, no, this will not be a political show, but
No.
yeah, no, it is in the political realm that we have to dive into tonight for the topic. However, I never heard of this guy till you brought this dude up. Why are you following this guy? Just out of
So
curiosity.
I am following him. Uh, he didn't make the tweet. A journalist made the tweet, and the video came across my feed because of a group chat that I'm in with a bunch of um, political people in New York. I know a lot of like political activists in New York, and they've all been organizing against Yang because they don't like him. But this journalist posted this interview, and this is not the first time that Yang has made, let's call it what it is, ignorant comments about the mentally ill.
Okay, now hang on.
I know.
Because we have the technology, we're going to play the clip. Aren't you excited? We can play clips.
I am. This is awesome.
I know. Now, what the listeners don't know is we're actually going to play the clip and listen to it, but it's going to sound crappy. So, through the magic of editing, I'm actually going to embed the clip in there so we sound like we just hit a button and it played while you and I were actually talking. But now the illusion is completely ruined, so it doesn't really even matter.
Yeah,
However, I just
but
think it'd
you've
be neat.
but you've grown up so much. I remember when you decried illusions like this. You've grown.
Yes, but I'm like that I'm like the
You're
masked magician.
yeah.
I'm the guy that like pisses off the other magicians because I reveal how the trick is done.
Yeah, you're the magician who's like, okay, I did this really cool thing. Now let me explain it to you so nobody else can do it.
or to butt hurt you even further, let me explain to you before I actually pull it off, so the illusion is completely shattered and you realize that Dylan and I are just two dudes who have computers like every other dude with internet connections, and we can do a little bit of things with, you know, some mouse work and some keyboard work, and then we're not that special. But then again, that would defeat the purpose of us trying to create a feedback loop of dopamine on how special we are, because people click buttons all the time,
Yes.
like and smash and things like that.
So we would appreciate it if anyone in the comments section would still just say that we're special, even if you don't mean it, because that dopamine feedback loop is really nice.
Please, because me and him both suffer from some early childhood trauma, and we really, really want to be loved, and we really want to be accepted. I'm going to go ahead and play the clip.
All right.
You know, in just a bit, you're actually making an announcement this morning on diversifying the NYPD, using data to make neighborhoods safer. How is that different than what's actually being done? Talk to me a little bit about the plan. I know you're making the announcement later today, but give us a sneak peek here.
We want the NYPD to better reflect the diversity of our neighborhoods, of our communities. I want new cops to live in the city, because then they'd understand where they're serving and protecting better, and they'd also be off duty there, which would add to the number of people elevating public safety. And one of the things we're going to announce today that I'm very excited about is, right now, when a police officer encounters someone who does something disruptive but isn't quite at a level where you want to arrest the person, you know, that let's say that they seem kind of unwell, or they're harassing someone, what we need to do is actually document that with a warning, let the person know, like, look, if you do something like this again, we're going to take much firmer action, because a lot of these folks are struggling in terms of mental illness and capacity. And so we can get them to better environments. That's going to be a win for everyone.
You know,
So that is Andrew Yin, in his own words, discussing his approach for the NYPD with the Unwell. Dylan, the microphone is all yours, my friend.
So Andrew Yang has made many, many ignorant comments throughout his campaign, reflective of a whole bunch of groups, not limited to the mentally ill. But his comments here, I don't think can be ignored and surpass his usual ignorance to malice. That clip is malicious. He is trying to take a tone that, oh, we're going to help these people, but he, either through lack of understanding or lack of care to understand, misses the entire point that people have been trying to make about the police and the mentally ill for years. Police don't have the proper training to deal with the mentally ill. Putting a two-strike system in place doesn't fix anything. It exacerbates the problem. It puts a penalty on the problem. We don't know how to deal with the mentally ill in this country. We never have. But to have a candidate pushing this type of quote unquote reform under the veil of compassion, I think is incredibly dangerous and damaging to police reform movements and to mental illness awareness movements. I don't know. Am I off base here?
Oh, there's a lot of things I could say. But let me ask you this, since you're following it closer, is he getting any blowback from this kind of a position? Because I think there's like the second piece of information that's come from this guy, where evidently he has a certain view about people who are dealing with issues mentally or emotionally. So is he getting any, like, are people saying anything back to this dude about this stuff?
No, he's been running a campaign largely insulated from criticism. He's been seen as the front runner for most of the campaign. He's now losing. He's losing considerable ground, but there's no real evidence to suggest that it's based on his comments about mental illness. Unfortunately, I tend to be of the belief that a candidate never gets criticism for the things that warrant criticism.
So, I mean, let me make sure I understand, playing devil's advocate a little
Of
bit.
course.
Let me see if I understand what he's talking about. Evidently, there is an issue in the subways in New York where mentally ill people are flipping out in enclosed spaces with a lot of other people. And so he is addressing this issue by saying that what we need, now he doesn't say peace officers, he says cops, but he means law enforcement officers with weapons who have a history of one of them. One of the main points, never mind, I don't want to get off on the commentary quite yet. But what he's basically saying is we need to put more cops on subways to monitor for quote unquote unwell people. They're not ready to be arrested yet. So he's open to the idea of unwell people being arrested. So that's kind of built into the statement. Am I off on that?
No, you're not. And
Okay.
while you're talking, let me look. Oh,
Hmm.
can I read you a quote from him from
You have my
another
permission.
interview that
You
he
have
gave?
my permission.
I
Yes.
so Andrew Yang 6 days ago on May 14th said, quote, "I believe in mental health, but if you have someone who's mentally ill on the subway, you're going to need a police officer at least present and in proximity to help improve the situation."
To help improve the situation.
It hit in a year where we've been talking about the role of the police and how in many cases they escalate violence. I don't know how somebody can make a statement like this and not realize how, at the very least, it's tone deaf, if not factually incorrect.
It sounds like something coming from an ivory tower that where this guy has never descended down with the hoi polloi. I mean, for one thing, me and you have been covering mental health and things like that for the past few episodes, and it's like everybody's unwell, dude. We all gonna
Yeah.
have a cop chaperone now?
Yeah. So
Who
I,
who defines unwell? The cop or is a licensed clinician?
yeah. So I wrote I'll get to like my serious, like nuanced commentary in a moment, but let me finish my fire and brimstone. Um,
Please. I
I
love fire and brimstone.
I wrote a tweet. Basically, it seems uniquely American and offensively American to punish people for struggling too loudly and making people uncomfortable.
Oh my God, that's amen to you for that, dude. That's not even a joke. That's a very profound statement you just said. Say that again, please.
It's uniquely and offensively American to punish people for struggling too loudly.
Yes. Our our pain and suffering is causing so much inconvenience in everyone else's perfect little world.
Yeah. Um,
What we really need is the presence of an armed guard.
yeah,
We need
we need more cops because that's worked brilliantly. The militarization of society has not led to any blowback in the last 20 years.
not at all. Back in the first tenure of Zen in the Car, when Jason Patrick and Curtis Sermons and Bree were a part of it, we did like a long episode on Zen in the Car TV about the issues of police brutality. I can't quite remember all their names because there's a montage of in just that year how many people had been murdered, outright murdered. By law enforcement officers. One of them that really just shook me to the core was a guy who, if I recall correctly, and I don't recall his name, he was like a paranoid schizophrenic that was hurting nobody, living out in a tent in a desert, and they murdered the guy. The video is it's on that YouTube. I mean, the Zen in the Car episode, and I don't want to ever watch it again. But
I
he
never
was,
will. I'll be too angry and too scared.
yeah. I mean, they beanbagged the poor guy, and then they kill him with an AR-15, and then when he's there bleeding out, they sick the dog on him when he's completely immobilized. So the dog is the last thing that this guy experiences is the teeth of a German shepherd tearing his flesh open while he's bleeding out because he's
Mm.
unwell. This is typically the response that occurs when police officers show up to a scene not equipped with the knowledge of how to de-escalate a situation with someone suffering from a mental ailment or emotional ailment. They don't
Yes.
show up to de-escalate.
No, that's not what they're trained for. Like I almost don't blame the cops because dealing with somebody who's mentally ill when you don't have the proper training must be terrifying.
Exactly.
Like
Right.
I almost don't blame them. They're not equipped.
No, they're not equipped, and I mean, and not getting conspiratorial. Biden has a double body or a body double, or a clone or whatever for whatever reason. Now there's a Biden rubber ducky that drives him around, or I don't know what that means.
But
But
body doubles are a favorite of conspiracy theorists. It's a good well to go back to.
yeah, there's always motive.
Mm.
um, is one body double smart? I mean, what? I don't get it.
Don't
Anyway,
want to get off track.
I don't want to get off track. But now I'm off track. Oh man, I am off track. What were we talking about?
The
Oh,
mentally cops dealing with the
oh,
mentally ill.
yeah, not getting conspiratorial, but I mean, I've read the documents. The documents is documented, where like the Department of Homeland Security basically has issued things to local law enforcement, where they're like, hey, if they got an IQ above a certain amount, you probably don't need to hire them because law enforcement offices and police departments that are privately owned, which is 90+% in this country, they do not want men and women wearing a badge with weapons thinking for themselves. They just want them to follow orders. So I'm not saying, I'm not making a blanket statement and saying all people who put on a badge who work for police departments are morons. Okay. I'm just saying, in general, most of them don't know what they're doing. They don't know the law. So they certainly don't know how to handle somebody with complex post traumatic stress disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or any other amount of ailment. They don't know any of that stuff.
No, the mentally ill and the disabled make up a large percentage of those killed by cops.
Yeah. And
And
you and
and
yeah, you mentioned disabled too, because it is more than just mentally, people who are struggling mentally and emotionally. The disabled, like there was somebody who went into a diabetic coma and he was murdered because they thought he was like high or intoxicated.
my my dad and I were talking one day, and I joked, and I said, if I were in a situation where for some reason the cops were after me, they'd tell me to put my hands up, and they'd shoot me for not complying.
Exactly. And that's not even a joke.
No, I wasn't kidding. I wasn't fully kidding.
That is not even a joke. So, you know, okay, so let's get back to his comments. Okay. So let me make sure I got this right. Okay. Um, if somebody is exhibiting unwell behavior, in normal circumstances, they should be arrested. However, we want to be lenient and give them a warning, right?
Oh, yeah, give them a warning because
Right.
all I need when I'm having a panic episode, when I'm having really bad anxiety, I just need to be warned that if it happens again, I'll be arrested.
Right. That we're going to take firmer action. That's what you need to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll help.
Yeah. I mean, and gee,
Okay, I want to get
go ahead.
Yang. It, if Yang were saying we want to put mental health professionals on every subway in New York City, not only would I not be making this episode, I would be applauding him. That's what that's what we need. We need more people who understand the complexities of mental health to be helping people because there was a systematic effort due to stigma back in the 80s to rip down the mental health care infrastructure in this country. There just was. I mean, you can't argue that the mental health institutions across the country closed, and we have never repaired that. We have never fixed that mistake.
I don't, yeah, and I don't think the state has. No,
No,
I don't think the state has for sure.
the state has never fixed that. The state has in every instance taken every step necessary to ignore mental illness because it's not convenient. It's not cancer. It's not something that can be treated with expensive You can't really put billions and billions of dollars towards mental health research. You can, but you're not going to come up with the expensive treatments that are going to make people tons of money.
Right. That's why this is another reason why I think that that last Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie was a tour de force, because, when you take it through this lens, it makes a little bit more sense now. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
I've never denied the subtext of that movie. It's a well-written movie. I have my issues, as you know, though.
Right. Of course, I know, but we're not doing a critique. I'm just saying the idea of a guy who's clearly suffering from some unwellness, and a system that is looking at people who are suffering as a pariah. Well, you're going to get what you deserve if you keep that mess up. Just saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what do you expect?
Yeah. But the other part of his statement that I find ironic too is that, like, the warning, if you listen to the clip again, he says to document their unwellness, essentially, or am I off? You're gonna do? I mean,
Uh,
you compiling a database for some stars or something? What are you doing, dude?
yeah, I don't know what he's. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know that he is thinking. My ultimate defense of Yang is just pure ignorance. I don't think he understands. I don't. At some point, it crosses the line
Mhm.
into his ignorance is actually harmful, and I think it is here. I think it absolutely is. His ignorance here is as dangerous as the ignorance of the cop who
Mhm.
he's going to send.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's messed up, and I mean, it's very it's that's a slippery slope. I'm pretty sure this dude won't win, but in the event that
Well,
he does,
okay, but even if he doesn't win, the other person running against him is a literal cop
uh
who said that who supported the stop and frisk policies of Michael Bloomberg.
oh dear God, and it's a good thing I'm as far away from New York as I can get.
Yeah,
Jeez, dude.
yeah, these are the two leaders. One
Yeah.
one is openly malicious, the other is ignorant to the point of malice.
I don't know. I don't know if it's ignorance, because this guy it sounds to me like there may, and I'm not trying to start a rumor or anything. I'm just objectively looking as somebody who might have similar scenarios, but it sounds like this guy might have someone in his life or in his past that had a mental illness that he just detested for it. And, like, that's the lens that he's viewing all people with emotional or mental ailments, is that I don't know about the best option you can give them is a cage. Okay. Now, I have been in the position of dealing with people with severe mental illnesses who, over a period of time, did ultimately, due to not necessarily lack of treatment, but inefficient avenues for proper treatment, did ultimately become violent. Okay. And I was on the business end of the violence, okay, from this person who was unwell. And thankfully, the officers who did respond, we had a conversation like, that something's got to be done, because now this person has gotten to the point of violence, and where it goes from there, who knows? So you don't necessarily throw them in a cage. And I mean, you if a situation is violent, even if somebody's unwell or not well, I mean, being violent is unwell in my opinion anyway. But if somebody's being violent, sure, if they're in the act of being violent, or there's like not overwhelming, but reasonable cause to believe that somebody else's life or limb is in danger, yes, diffuse the situation, de-escalate if you can. But I think if they pull a knife out and they're waving it around, I got you. Okay.
Yeah,
But
reasonable. Reasonable.
reasonable. Right. But in addition to that, after that's over with, understand that you probably, if you're the guy who restrained them, you probably inflicted more trauma, maybe necessary trauma, but it was inflicted. So let's see if we can now, after this situation's been diffused by distance or whatever, we get this person the help that they actually need.
Yes. That's all that we need to be working towards, is getting people the help they need. And a policy like this does the opposite of getting people the help they need. At worst, or at best, it exacerbates their problems.
Mm-hmm.
At worst, it could be fatal.
Yeah, and it has been. History hath shown
Mm-hmm.
that it'll lead to fatalities. So let me ask you this question: Are the other political circles that you're running around with, are they just as detested and disgusted by these remarks as you are?
Oh, absolutely. They were more disgusted than I was.
Okay, what are some of the things that they're saying?
They largely have the same view of it that I do on this. They're a little more likely to see his comments as overtly malicious as you do, versus me, who just thinks it's complete and utter ignorance that results in malice. I don't know. And I saw some people saying, "Oh, that because New York has ranked choice voting, where you get to rank the candidates based on, so you get 5 options, and if your first option doesn't win, your vote goes to your second. If your second option doesn't win, your vote goes to your third, and so on and so on."
All right.
Because there are like a bajillion candidates running. Um,
Okay.
And I've seen people saying, "Oh, I can't rank Andrew Yang now," and I understand. This comment makes it really hard for me to say you should. I would still rank Yang on my ballot, just because the other guy is objectively worse and will harm more people with his law enforcement policies, and will probably do what Yang is saying he wants to do here. Because these comments are just, they're going to escalate the violence. There's social tension right now around cops. Putting more on the streets and giving them a mandate to go after the mentally ill is just going to make things worse.
I mean, if you're that concerned about it, Yin.
What?
Yeah, I know. I'm deliberately calling the guy Yin. All right. All right. If he's
Yang.
that if he's that concerned about it, okay, and if this must be done in the subways of New York, I got a suggestion. How about firemen? How about we put firemen on the subways rather than police officers? Because for one, for the most part, those guys are cool. They only come when you call. Okay. Two, I mean, if you know firemen on a personal level, they tend to be more laid back, more cool, more chill, and they're trained to de-escalate intense situations just by nature. I mean, if you got to do it, Yin, can we just use firemen? You know, firemen. Yeah, just saying. That's just my suggestion. If you got to do it, now that's even me
or
being
hire some
facetious.
or hire some mental health professionals and have them go on the subways.
Well, I mean, it's like this. If you're going to put law enforcement officers, then it's got to be a mandate that they go through intensive training to become, I mean, whatever,
Yes.
to get licensed in mental health or something. They got to do that.
Yes.
Or,
My police reforms would be far too expensive. I acknowledge it, but honestly, you should fire almost every cop
mm,
in America, and the ones you don't fire need to get extensive mental health and de-escalation training and
you're right.
disability training. You need to totally revamp how they're trained.
Or we could take a bunch of therapists and give them firearms training. Either or.
Yeah,
Okay.
both of those are actually fine.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't know that I necessarily want my therapist having a gun, but whatever.
well, I mean, either or. Let's compromise. Meet me in the middle. Either
Either or.
you're walking assault weapon is going to have to get some training in how to de-escalate situations to people who are unwell, or we put some super cool therapists in there with a little bit of kung fu skills, some firearms training, whatever.
You know,
Because
all right, I'll meet you in the middle. Instead of firearm training, we give them actual kung fu training.
yeah, I know, right? Teach them jujitsu.
Yeah,
Be
we
awesome.
send them to a dojo. They get some jujitsu training, and they're trained to peacefully disarm somebody by
Right.
beating the crap out of them instead
Yeah.
of shooting them.
Yeah, and therapists are less likely to do some lethal stuff because they're accustomed to dealing with unwell people day in and day out. So it's like they're not going to go into fight or flight mode, like a cop would who just got back from overseas and from the military, he's got PTSD. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, we have the wrong incentive system for our police. I know we said this isn't going to be a political episode, and it won't be. But we have the wrong incentive system for police, especially with regards to mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do. It's messed up. But on the other note, that I do find the irony of this because I'm a dual diagnosis, right? So I got complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So, when I'm not in a good way, I'm unwell. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
How, however, I do think it's also funny because I've said this a lot. I'm recovering from alcohol abuse syndrome too in life, and I've always said this, but it's like it's so funny if you have a disease like cancer or something like that and you relapse into cancer, people love you and they surround you with love, and they're going to be with you and things like that. But when you have the disease and it's a dis-ease, addiction is a dis-ease.
Yeah,
Okay, it has nothing to do with your moral or ethical code. It has nothing to do with willpower. It is a dis-ease. But 99% of people who have interacted with anybody, and I'm speaking from personal experience, okay? Just like this guy. Well, yeah, the first time that you relapse with this dis-ease, most people will, they'll document it and give you a warning. But dude, Dylan, I can tell, the laundry list of people in my life who have it was like deuces, I'm out. You're a piece of trash. You know what I mean? And that's not just me. That's every person who has to live with the dis-ease of addiction. They are
yeah,
treated like trash when
yeah.
they are
I mean,
struggling.
yes, they are. But there's also there's no there is no real way to help somebody with that in my experience. Uh, I've dealt with addiction not myself, but through family, and it's really, 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 really hard on everybody. It it is, and I wish there was a way to help them. I do, very much.
I agree with you that yes, it is very, very hard on the people around somebody who suffers from it. Yeah. And I assure you that there is no one in a situation like that in the middle of broken families and broken relationships and things like that who is more aware of that than the addict. Because
Oh, I have no doubt.
before the people who are surrounding the addict, before they call deuces and they already have their pre-prepared scripts of all the horrible things they're going to say to that person, I assure you that person has said worse to themselves before they even get up off the floor. Okay,
I have
so
no doubt that
no doubt about it.
no
Now,
doubt. Uh,
I do disagree with you that there is no help and there is no hope for somebody suffering from the
Oh,
disease
no, no,
of
no, no,
addiction.
no, no, no. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that to be misconstrued. I misspoke.
Okay.
Um, there is hope. I've seen people beat addiction. There's hope. I do disagree with you that willpower isn't a factor. I think willpower is absolutely a factor in addiction. It's not the only factor, obviously, and it's not even the primary factor. But I think it is a factor. Um,
It is a factor.
yes,
It
it is
is a factor.
a factor.
But
And I think there is hope there. I mean, full disclosure, I have issues around people with addiction who have really, 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 really hurt me,
sure.
and I I struggle to know how to help people with that. So maybe I am a bad person who would leave. Maybe I am. I don't know. Uh, I genuinely don't know. Maybe I am that type of person.
No, and I'm not saying that people who call deuces on an addict are bad people. I'm not saying that at all. Um, I will say, it's the exact same scenario with this butthole. A lot of people, they're not qualified.
No.
They don't have enough knowledge to understand that it is a disease. It's a physical injury to the brain, and because they don't have it, I mean, it's an unseen disease. So everyone else looking in, they're like, why don't they just quit? And it's like, okay,
Well, obviously
let
they can't just quit.
yeah. I mean,
It,
it's like looking at you and going, why can't Dylan just walk? You know
yeah.
what I mean?
No. Yeah, that's fucking stupid.
I know, and that's why most addicts. I mean, you got a lot of addicts that commit suicide because, you know, because that's the way that they're kind of looked at as the pariah, and things like that. So it's you take that. So that's why I'm kind of happy that this asshat is making these asinine statements about people with mental or emotional issues, because it's like, yeah. So if you're offended at that, yeah, that's how addicts feel. That's how we feel like we're treated. Is you get a warning the next time, it's the stick, buddy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, and that is sometimes how people with addictions are treated, and that is really, really shitty. Um, I don't, again, like the cops who are unequipped to deal with mental illness and respond poorly. I don't necessarily blame people for leaving. It's not something that they're generally qualified for. But I can't imagine being in that position myself. I think it would be horrible. Actually, scratch that. As somebody your wheelchair comparison goes farther than you think. As somebody who's lived with a chronic physical illness all my life, I actually can understand that position.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
Don't it don't feel good, does it?
No, it's a horrible position.
You know.
But what I've also always said is I don't blame people for running, like for not wanting to deal with my condition. I never blamed people for it.
Yeah, well, and I know exactly where you're coming from. When I was younger, I did. I would take it like I didn't have the wisdom to look at other people. So I was bitter about a lot of people who threw deuces on me.
I understand.
Now, yeah,
I
now
can't say I don't relapse into moments of bitterness.
well, I mean, I don't now that I'm wiser and older and have more of a handle on that aspect of what the creator Stan made me, um, I can go, you know,
I'm sorry. I can never. It always breaks the tension when you say the creator stand.
yeah, dude. So, but I don't, so I'm not bitter, about broken relationships and how they respond, because it's like I go, well, they don't have it in them. They're not cut out for the job of being in the life of somebody who has to live with this, every day. So I can't be bitter about that. But you do still have those moments of relapse into a little bit of like, man, if, why did they give up on me so quickly? Why, if
Yeah.
they would have just stuck around to see me get it together, then they would totally, but they didn't. And why didn't they? But I think that's the area with people with emotional in mental illnesses or unwellnesses and physical injuries to the brain, like CPTSD and addiction, is you can't let that you can't let that define you still going forward with yourself and allowing yourself to see yourself on the other end of it,
Yeah.
because I mean, and as a matter of fact, maybe in some circumstances, that's what it takes to get somebody suffering from chemical or stimulant abuse to get to the point where they do. Unfortunately, I mean, that's kind of where I had to get. You know what I mean? To go, all right, well, this has got to get done, and nobody else is going to do this for you, dude. You got to do it, and you got to live with you. You got to be with you,
You
and
gotta be happy with yourself.
yeah. I certainly don't want a cop tethered to my hip like this asshat's talking about doing to people. You know what I mean?
No, that's the opposite of what people need.
Yeah.
People
I
need
don't know, man.
passion. They don't need a baton.
Yeah. Good statement. Good statement. You got anything else to say about this clown?
No, that covered everything.
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah. Let's just hope that this type of mentality doesn't spread any further than this
Yeah,
thing.
and I hope maybe he learns from this. Maybe he gets some blowback, and maybe he hears people's concerns and he changes. I'm not holding my breath, but maybe.
Nah, man. Politicians like this dude, once they pick up a script, they got to stick to it. So
And I
it's an
agree, but
yeah, I mean, on face value, I don't know this guy. I haven't been following this guy, but just when you sent the clip to me, I was like, really, dude, this is a harmful position for you to be spouting. You know what I mean?
this is a harmful position to spout out of ignorance.
Oh, before we wrap it up, this is funny because I go to 12-step recovery things. I go twice a week, and now I'm starting to actually do 3 times a week because I'm doing audio video. I'm going to be doing audio video, learning like cameraman stuff. But it's funny. Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. But it's funny because at the recovery tonight, God, it was so hilarious. At the recovery tonight, I have crystals in my pocket, weird things like that, and I go to a Baptist church for this recovery group called Celebrate Recovery. It's nationwide. So, but I love it because it's not depressing like AA, because after AA you want to drink, but you go to this thing and it's the environment where it's like, hey, dude, we should celebrate the fact that we are addicts and that we're not, that we're sober today. We should have a good time. So it's not like AA because you show up in an auditorium, there's music, everybody's laughing, cutting up, and we're all messed up. And everybody in the room is like you. They get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I got this little sphere crystal thing, this rose quartz, and I'm kind of fidgeting with it with my hands. This is so hilarious. And I accidentally dropped it. Now you're in an auditorium, so you're on an angle. So this thing is a sphere. It starts rolling, right? And I'm like, oh no, dude, I jumped on the floor and started jumping in between the different pews or the different auditorium seats looking for this thing. And this one lady looks at me, she says, are you okay? And I was like, oh God, either they're going to think I'm a Pentecostal and I'm like flopping around on the floor, or they're going to think like this Yang dude that I'm unwell.
Oh no.
It was great. It was great. I laughed
awesome.
myself out of the auditorium. Yeah.
I love
like
that.
jumping in. I'm jumping in and out of the pews, and they're like, what if somebody had perceived that as me being unwell? Thank God I was in a room full of addicts.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well, did you get it off your chest?
I did. Thank you everyone for indulging me. I know that wasn't really fire and brimstone, but it's the closest I can get.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention, man. You want to carry us on out of this one?
Yes, all right. That was the Super Show ever, episode 520. Thank you all for listening. We will be back soon. I don't know when because we don't keep a schedule, but stay tuned.
Stay